Hello,
Hello.
and welcome to Planet Marzipan, the Fish and Marillion podcast. I'm Mezza, and here's my mate,
Craig Houston.
Hello, and welcome to Planet Marzipan. I'm Mezza, and I'm here with my good friend,
Craig.
and it's another Planet Marzipan Meets episode, and we are really pleased to be joined today by Anne Bond from the Web UK. Hi, Anne.
Hi,
Welcome to the podcast.
thanks for inviting me on.
No, you're more than welcome. The first question we ask all our newbies on the pod is, how did you first hear about Marillion and fish?
Okay, well, I think probably going back, my sister was a really big Genesis fan. So around about 1982, she used to belong to what was called the Genesis Information Service, which was kind of a fan club of the time. And she had a sort of pen pal that she'd found through there, and he used to sometimes send her tapes. And he sent her a tape and said, "Oh, this band's just new and they're really interesting, and they're called Marillion, and what do you think?" And she listened to it and sort of thought, it's okay, but it wasn't a very good quality audio tape that had been recorded live somewhere, so she sort of put it on one side. And then sort of later on, when Script for a Jester's Tear came out, she sort of revisited it all. So it was always sort of there in my life. She had a thing of embroidering jackets. So she did embroidered a jester jacket, and the jester climbing through the window. She did that for people. And so it was always, I was very much aware of it, but didn't listen to the music a lot. I was only about 12. And then later on at school, one of my best friends, Tim Sidwell, was a big Marillion fan, so we used to chat about Marillion, and he actually used to write some poetry. Did he tell you that when he was on?
No, he's not divulged that before.
Get the
Oh,
dirt.
yes. Yeah, I remember him saying to me, "I've written this poem," and it was all about a jester, and I said, "Oh, I know what this is influenced by. You're really into Marillion, aren't you?" So we sort of, again, had a bit of a chat, and sort of, we were a bit older then, probably that would have been about sort of 1985, 1986 maybe. And obviously Marillion were hitting it much bigger then, so, I was very well aware of what they were doing, but I still wouldn't have called myself a really big fan, to be honest, until I went to university, and that would have been 1989. And I'd already talked to Tim about the fact that Fish had left. That was well publicised, and he'd said, "You ought to check out the new lead singer. I think you'll really like him." And I hadn't had much time to do so until I got to university and was put in a house share, and met a guy in the house, and he said, "Oh, let's put some music on. I've got this album by Marillion." And I said, "Oh, wow, is this the new lead singer? I haven't had a chance to hear him yet." And he played me Season's End, and I thought it was amazing, really, really blown away by it. And later we got married, the guy who played me Season's End. So that's Stuart, and he also helps out with the Web UK as well. And we went to see Marillion together. It was sort of just before we started going out. It was almost a first date, but not quite. We went to see them at Newport Centre on the Season's End tour. And I just absolutely became really obsessed from that point on. So, I mean, I remember in my house, I think it would have been Holidays in Eden came out not that long after, and I remember having it on in my bedroom, and one of my friends saying, "I won't be able to sit my exams without hearing you singing Cover My Eyes" in the background, because that's been the soundtrack of my revision. So it was just, that time of your life when you're at university and you're a student, and it's music's one of the only things that matters to you at the time. I think I just really loved it. I did, but we did used to follow Fish as well. So we went to see Fish on tour quite a few times. And, I revisited then all the earlier Marillion albums, which I'd heard as a younger child and not really got into at the time, but got into them through the fact that I'd got into Season's End, I suppose. So it's sort of, it felt like it's been a part of my life.
It's a huge part of your life. That's the reason you and Stuart got together almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
That's going to take some topping for anybody else that comes on the podcast, I think. And you're involved with the web? So
Not
how did you
yes,
become involved in the Web UK?
yeah. Well, that came about through the karaoke competition. So when I left university, I became a teacher, and because I was still obsessed by Marillion, I was determined that I was going to somehow get Marillion into my teaching. So I was always doing things with whatever was out at the time. So we used to do music lessons. You know, if I had to teach about a particular aspect of music, I'd think, oh, what Marillion song can I play to my class? You know, try and convert them. They were sort of, I had 10-year-olds at the time. And
Get the Marillion.
and I can remember when Anarachnophobia came out and there were all the Barrys.
Yeah.
I can't remember what year would that have been?
That was 2001.
It's a bit later. 2001.
Yeah.
I remember I had a whole lot of flyers from the Web UK that were just covered in Barrys, and I cut them up and I hid them all around the classroom. And we used to play this game of Hunt Barry in the classroom, and they were just, you know, they very much got into Marillion. But anyway, so just before that, the Web UK started doing their free CDs at Christmas, and one of the early ones was this karaoke competition. And I thought, I know what I can do. I'll get my class to sing one of these songs. So I had a look to see what the choices were, and the most obvious one seemed to be Beautiful. So we practiced it in the classroom, recorded it on a tape back in those days, sent the tape off, and I didn't really think much of it. I just thought it was probably a bit of a novelty that nobody else would think of getting a bunch of 10-year-olds to sing a Marillion song. So quite a few months later, the phone rings and it was Eric Nielsen. He's like, "Hi, this is Eric from Marillion." It's like, obviously in a much more American accent than that.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, hi." And he said, "Oh, you sent in a tape of your children singing." And he said, "We can't really have you win the competition because obviously not the best, you know, but he said, we think it's really interesting. Could you just bring your class down to the racket club?" And it, you know, I just thought, no way is anybody going to want us to do that. So I was sort of trying to think of the logistics. How do I get 30 kids down to the racket club? Looked into hiring a coach, which was quite a lot of money, and it wasn't really at a very well-off school. So I got back in touch, said, "Oh, can you pay a coach for us?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, that's fine." So off we went on the coach and spent a couple of hours at the racket club singing Beautiful with the band. And then we made a recording of it. And that was just the most amazing day, really. You know, it was so, to me, it was really surreal meeting the band for the first time. Because even though I'd been to lots and lots of concerts, we were the sort of people who would have just gone to whatever gig was closest to us. So we're based in the Midlands. So if they played in Wolverhampton or if they played in Birmingham, we would go to that date on the tour. Yeah. And then that would be it, really. And we'd look forward to the next tour. So, you know, I'd never really thought about ever meeting these people who'd sort of been in my life for such a long time. So I just remember walking into the kitchen at the racket club and Steve Rothery coming up going, "Hello, my name's Steve and I'm the guitarist in Marillion." And it just seemed like, yes, I know, you know, you've been with me all my life. So, you know, and just, if you've ever been to the racket club, it's not huge.
I haven't, no.
And to get 30 kids in, I was trying to say, don't touch anything. Don't touch any of those guitars. Don't mess with that. Don't pull any wires out. But they were great. They were a lovely set of kids, and the band were lovely with them. I remember Ian coming in with his sunglasses on. I think we got there about lunchtime, and he sort of wandered in, and he said, "Oh, hi, kids. I don't really appear normally before lunchtime." And I think they just thought there was this amazing rock star. They were, even the children were so starstruck. They wanted autographs signed. And I seem to think they sent Mark off to the local shop in the village to buy some sort of sweets for them. I think he could only find Kinder eggs. So I think he came back with 30 Kinder eggs or something. And they were opening all that, sitting in amongst all the paraphernalia of the racket club. So it was quite a surreal experience, actually.
Yeah.
We did get filmed by a TV crew that came from the sort of local, whatever the local news is down there. And so I've got that somewhere on a video, this little clip of how Marillion had invited kids down there. And I also met Andy Rotherham for the first time. He was there, and he was running the Web UK at the time, and thought it was quite a fun thing. So we popped up to see what was happening. with all these kids there. I think after about 2 hours, the band were kind of like, "You're going to go now."
Exhausted.
Novelty had worn off. Yeah.
Yeah, the novelty had worn off. But true to form, they sent a box with 30, well, a few more than 30 CDs in, so that each child could take their own CD away. And even I keep in touch with some of those kids now, and they just say it was such a treasured memory to them. Age 10. And they're all I don't know, they're probably about 30 something now. So
you're single-handedly responsible for the second wave of Marillion fandom, I think.
Quite possibly. So anyway, where was I going with this? Oh, I know. So it was actually through that I ended up becoming part of the Web UK team. So Lynn and Pete Wells, who also involved in the Web UK at the time, and Pete still is, they live in Wolverhampton, which isn't that far away from me, or they used to at the time. And they got in touch with me to say, "Oh, we really, heard about you going to the Racket Club. It's really nice for somebody local. Do you fancy meeting up before the next gig at Wolverhampton?" So we met up with them and became really, really good friends with them. In fact, Pete's godfather to one of my children now. And so
they're an absolutely lovely couple, the two of them. I've been friends with them for more than 20 years. Love them to bits.
Yeah, some of the nicest people that I've ever met, really.
Yeah.
And actually, I'd never sort of socialised much at Marillion gigs. We would go, watch the gig, and sort of go home and never really speak to people. I had no idea that there was this whole community, to be honest, going on. And it's really unusual to suddenly meet people and have a drink before the gig. So we met up with them, and they told me a bit about the Web UK. And as part of the prize for the karaoke competition, as well as going down to the Racket Club, as if that wasn't enough excitement, they said, "Oh, you can have a pass to any tour, any date on the tour." Wow. So the one that was coming up was actually in Dudley, which has never been the most prestigious of places for gigs, but there was a venue called JB's.
JB's, yeah.
Pretty much a dive with a very sticky floor. And so we said, it was one of the first dates on the tour. It might be the second date on the tour, I can't remember. Anyway, they said, "We'll turn up at JB's and we'll give you, a pass, and you can come in free as part of your prize." So we went along, met Lynn and Pete again, and picked up our passes. And Lynn and Pete looked at them and they said, "Oh, those are the same as our passes that we've got. They actually will do you for the whole tour." And we were like, no, surely not. We've just got these just for Dudley. We'll probably have to hand them in again tonight. And they said, "You won't, they've just given you them now." So we were like, "Oh, okay. So where else are they playing?" I can't even remember now where they were playing. I think they probably played Manchester and Nottingham. So we decided, right, we could do this. We could actually go to some other gigs. So we started going to all the subsequent gigs after that one on the tour. And I think the final one was in London at Shepherd's Bush.
Yeah.
And as we sort of were going, we sort of got to know Andy Rotherham a bit more. Simon and Vicky were working for the Web UK at the time, and sort of started to get to know the fact, that all these fans are out there who are really friendly and willing to chat and hang out with you at gigs. So that was a really interesting experience, because I've said we'd only ever done like one night on a tour and gone home. And now we were going back night after night after night, and it sort of becomes a bit of an addiction then. You think, there's another gig. Could I actually drive up to Leeds in one night and then get back to school for the next day? And it's like, it's actually possible on 3 hours sleep. So that was fantastic. And so because we sort of were hanging out a bit with Lynn and Pete, and because they lived near, we started sharing a car to go to the gigs. And so we were waiting for them at the end of the gig, and they used to hand out the Web UK flyers back in the day. So we used to stand outside the gigs and help them hand out the flyers. So when the next tour came along, we were sort of like, okay, we're not just going to buy tickets for Wolverhampton or Birmingham or wherever they were going to be. We're going to try and get to as many as we could. So we bought multiple tickets, and again went to as many gigs as possible, and again helped out the Web UK. And then I think we got invited to help stuff the envelopes once with all the magazines. And after a while, Andy Rotherham, who was kind of probably the longest standing member at the time, sort of said, you guys are always around and you've worked really hard. We could probably do with another couple of people on the team. can I put it to everybody else on the Web UK team that you get, roped in to actually become sort of more full-time members. So first I joined, and then Stuart came along as well. So we ended up sort of being, just taken on by the team. But it would have never have happened really had I not done that karaoke competition and, just realised that it's possible to go to more than one gig on a tour. That probably changed my life in lots of ways, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. Your fandom goes up another level, and your social group has been enlarged massively through doing these lots of different gigs in lots of different towns.
I think that's how we met a lot of people as well, isn't it, over the years?
I think so, yeah.
Going all over the place.
A lot of the people that we invite on the podcast are just people, guys and girls that we've met at gigs and our conventions. Conventions are particularly Port of Zealand, a great way to meet new friends if we're into the band.
Especially being Northerners, we just talk to anybody and everybody, and we can't shut up.
Well, there is that.
Yeah, and so, it is fantastic the way you can meet people from all over the country, and like you said, with the conventions, just all over the world, really.
Yeah.
I can't count now how many people I know in other countries who are either, through the other web fan clubs that are sort of on the teams that I've liaised with over the years, but sort of like, oh yeah, I know someone in Portugal, and oh yeah, I know someone in Norway, and that, I don't know, that was never part of my life before Marillion came along, really.
And was there ever any other band that you were into in the way that you're into Marillion now?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, my sister was a really big fan of Genesis when I was younger, and that was probably my first band that I really got into. I remember her playing me Duke when that first came out, and I really liked that. And Wind and Wuthering, and then there were three, and sort of that era. And a bit later on, more into the Peter Gabriel stuff. And then I did become a really big fan of Peter Gabriel. I would say that sort of that was quite a love. And then when I met Stuart at university, he was into quite a lot of the sort of smaller neo-prog bands that I'd never really had anything to do with. He was very much into IQ and Pendragon and Jadis and all those sort of bands that were around about that time. So I've sort of seen IQ quite a lot of times. We got quite passionate about them for a while. In fact, I didn't realise at the time that Stephanie Bradley was really into a lot of those sort of bands as well, and that we must have been at lots of gigs together, because we used to travel down to the Marquee sometimes to see. They always used to do a Christmas gig, and sometimes comparing notes to the later, it's like, oh, I was there, and it's like, but didn't know at the time. So but probably nobody has lasted in my life as long as Marillion. But then not many bands have lasted perhaps as long as Marillion with their...
But of the bands you've just listed, I mean, I'm going to the Pendragon weekend in a couple of weeks' time in Peterborough, I think it is. And as you say, IQ have lasted, but on a different sort of level to Marillion.
Yeah.
They're very much a cottage industry. But yeah, it's great. It's great
Definitely.
that you've kind of... I mean, Stuart has obviously introduced you to those bands, and through all of that, your love of Marillion's kind of shone through as well.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I think, Phil, now in my life, I don't have time for music in the way that I did. Perhaps it happens to all of us as we get a bit older. But as I just feel like I'm working, I'm at school, and don't really have. I don't know. Teaching's changed a little bit. I don't have the opportunity to try to get my Marillion in there quite as much as I used to when I first started teaching. So I would say that music's less a part of my life than it is now. And I don't think there's many bands I found recently who I would still get excited. If a Marillion album's coming out, I'm still just as excited about it.
Yeah.
I can't really think of many equivalent bands, except for how perhaps Peter Gabriel went to see fairly recently, sort of that I would get that enthusiastic about anymore.
But you've still got those too, and that's great. I mean, I think you're right. It very much depends on your work demands and your lifestyle. I'm lucky in that my other half is very understanding, and I'm surrounded by lots of music and still buying new music and that sort of thing. But sometimes it doesn't work. You've got to, certainly being a teacher, you're very committed to being a teacher, and there's a lot of prep work because Craig's married to a teacher, so he knows as well.
Yes, it's all encompassing.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, but
if my bosses are listening, that's not to say I don't take my job seriously. I do, but I managed to get to see bands as well. Not that my bosses are listening, but yeah. So
Nice.
the Web UK now, what does your role? I mean, you're part of still part of a big team in the Web UK.
yeah.
What does your role entail?
Primarily now, I've sort of taken over. Well, I say it's not recently. It's probably been about 15, 20 years actually that I've been sort of the main editor of the magazine.
Yeah.
So normally I'm the person who's responsible for getting the content together and then passing it on to whoever's being our graphic designer at the time. We've been through a few different people designing the magazine. So normally the text comes to me. I read things through. I'm probably the bossiest or sort of organizer type person.
Most demanding.
Yeah. So I'm sort of more likely to get onto. We've got a group, Facebook group. So I'll be saying, right, come on, next magazine's coming along. What should we do? And that's got really hard over the years and changed massively because when I first started doing it, the internet was in its very, very early days.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember being a member of the Freaks mailing list and the Opium Den, and there was sort of a bit of chat going on, but the Marillion website wasn't really very well developed. There wasn't a lot of information out there, and I think people were still relying on the Web UK for, all the features in the interviews and everything else. And
even back then, there was the phone line for a while, wasn't there? In the late 90s. Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, the phone line. Gosh, yeah, but there was nowhere else you'd read interviews. I can remember when I first got very passionately into Marillion, just trying to get information from anywhere, and they weren't necessarily, I think it was probably when I think it might have been when before Brave came out. The Web UK had sort of gone through a bit of there was a bit of a transition going on there, I think. It's way before I started there. And we hadn't had a magazine for ages.
Yeah.
And I was trying to find out. And I used to every time I went into town, I used to go into WH Smith and flick through the music papers and press just to see, is anybody mentioning Marillion? Is anybody saying anything about when this new album's going to come out? I'd wander into HMV. Yeah, just have I missed something?
Yeah.
Seemed to be months of like nothing. No, know they're doing an album. I just want to see when's it coming out. Looking out for adverts and thinking there's no way of getting any information at all. Whereas these days, information's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think where the Web UK did at one point serve a purpose of it was the only way to really get these interviews. If you wanted to read an interview with Steve Rothery, chances are nobody else would have done it, and we were the only place. And I think things like some of the foreign travel, before I started, I know they used to run coach tours.
Yeah.
Some of the gigs. Yeah. Andy used to do that because otherwise you wouldn't have heard about it. So I think it's a surprise in many ways that we're still going, because there's so many other ways of getting this same information now in multiple forms. And with people like Tim taking our jobs away from us by doing these interviews all the time. And it's like, they're regularly, with the Marillion monthlies and the all those extras on the DVDs.
Yeah,
I feel like every possible question or avenue must have been explored by now. So
hopefully not, because we're trying to do it as well.
Yeah,
so.
Well, yeah, that's true. But so it gets to the point now when it's okay if there's an album coming out, because it's like, okay, let's find out all about the album. Let's interview the band. That's obvious. Yeah. Get to a year like this year, well, technically there's not a lot going on. It's too early to interview them about the new album. Got Cruise to the Edge. So we're just putting the finishing touches to the issue of the magazine, the current issue of the magazine. Yeah. So we've got reviews of the sort of things that have happened, like there was the H in Italy, and things like that. So there's the odd event that we can sort of rely on, or we'll get a review. But I don't think reviews are interesting enough in themselves to just fill a magazine with to make people still want to be members. So We've managed to interview Pete while he was recuperating, and tried to think of some different things to ask him that, maybe haven't been asked as often. But it is sometimes quite difficult to come up with content. So I'm sort of badgering and saying, come on, what can we do? What can we do? How can we, and I always think we're never going to fill this issue. How are we ever going to do it? And we always do, and end up, and Steph, who's our current designer, she does a great job of finding some photographs and putting it all together. And I think the current magazine, well, or has it been really for the past few years, is a very good quality publication. It doesn't really look like a fan club magazine.
And Steph's doing a great job with the layout. I did a review of the Steve Rothery band in Manchester and sent her some phone photos across, which she's made look amazing, I have to say. I think it's still got its place, definitely. And I think you've arrived at, is it 2 episodes? Look at me, podcast mode, 2 editions, 2 magazines editions a year, now, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I look back because we did originally it was 4.
It was,
I remember. I mean, I've been a member of the web for since 1989. I don't think we've ever managed 4 issues a year, either before I took it on or after. I think we were lucky if we managed 3, and we only ever charged for 4 at a time.
Yeah.
So really, over time, the cost has remained same as it was really ever. I don't know how we're doing it for that cost really, but the number of issues has gone down, but actually the number of pages we do, if you look back at some of the older web magazines, they're quite thin. Even when we went to the A4 size glossy, they might have had 24 pages in, and now we're regularly 48 pages. So I feel people are still getting quite a good deal. And actually, I don't know, as I've got older, like 6 months in between issues just seems to fly by. Really, I think, when I was 20 and I was hanging on for the next one, when's the next one coming out? It's felt like months. These days, I think, oh, gosh, is it that time again? Got to get another issue out. It feels like only the other day we did one. So, that sort of suits me now to do the 2 issues.
Doing episodes of podcasts once a week, it's a hamster wheel, isn't it?
We have a list, There's a spreadsheet with what we're going to do. Craig does the spreadsheet. I ask every week. What is it we're doing next week? Go in. I believe I was rereading John Collins' Separated Out. I think the Christmas CDs were Simon Clarke's idea, weren't they?
Do you know what? I'm not 100% sure. It was definitely in the time when he was very much in the thick of it, and before I'd really become involved. So I know Simon at that time was doing the magazine.
Yeah.
When I first got to know them, and it was much more. I mean, he did a fantastic job at that. They were crammed full of all sorts of things, but it was very much a fanzine in those days. It still looked quite like a fanzine. But I would have said at the time he was sort of very much the main man when it came to the sort of content.
Yeah.
Well,
if you're listening, Simon, fantastic idea. And if it wasn't your idea, I apologise to whoever's idea it was. But I think that's it with the two really quality magazines and then a disc at Christmas. I think it's fantastic value. Is it £10 at the moment?
I think it is still £10. I think it's £12.
I had a quick look before we started.
Oh, did you look? I was going to check. So I thought, if you ask me, I shall feel really stupid if I don't know how much it is. I think it's £12 if you live outside of the UK.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of members. It surprises me when we go down to stuff the magazines. The labels always come out in piles. We always have the UK, the EU, and then the rest of the world. I love the pile that says rest of the world, and it's absolutely fascinating. That's my favourite pile to do. I say I'll do the rest of the world, which sounds great, but the number of countries and the diversity of where people are. I love reading people's addresses of like some random place in Japan, and it's great if they've called their house after something Marillion related, and their address is like, I don't know, Season's End, and then they live, Osaka or something in Japan. So it's great to just see these far-flung Marillion fans. And we've pick up a lot of members in lots of countries, even ones where they've got their own webs. And we've got lots of webs all over Europe who are still producing fanzines, but people still like the Web UK magazine. So we sort of, I think we've always managed to maintain between about 2,500, 3,000 members.
That's really
consistently, which, there's a lot of stickers on it, envelopes.
Yeah. Well, I understand the envelope stuffing is a bit of an event, isn't it? You like to make an event.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes, definitely. And since so we've got the Jones family well on board. They spend quite a lot of time. Sheila and Alan and Lucy, they're often at the Racket Club because they're sort of Rich uses them if he needs a bit of help with some packing. And they've turned it into a bit of a cottage industry with the smiley faces of and one year we had Christmas stamps or something on the envelopes. But we don't get to meet up so much these days, apart from at the stuffing. Back in the day, we used to have meetings. We used to try and have an agenda and be quite organised. And these days, everything's done by sort of email or chat group. So when we do get together at the stuffing, it's quite nice. Going down to the racket club's always quite fun. Not as glamorous as some people may think, but better than the days when we used to stand in a porter cabin to do it, which was definitely not much fun. But it's funny because people sometimes send messages, and I think they have a vision of us. Some people do, that we actually sort of have our office, have a little office there, the Web UK office, and I think they think of something quite stylish. And that the band are popping in and out all the time, and we'd be sitting down with them and having a cup of coffee. So sort of sometimes get messages of saying, when the band are next popping, or could you just look in the Racket Club and see? And I'm like, I'm miles from the Racket Club, and I probably won't get down there until the next stuff, which might be 4 months away. But I just think people have got this vision, especially they have this they say either the Web UK elves, Web UK elves are doing this. I just think they think we beaver away living at the Racket Club all year round.
And you're here to dispel that rumour, are you now?
Sadly, I have to say.
But it's great. I think the fact that you are accessible as well, you much like Lucy and Stephanie and Steph, you interact with fans and you are accessible. I think that sort of brings everybody closer to the band and what you're doing.
Yeah. I think it's part of the whole family thing, isn't it? Anybody could be part of the magazine if anybody wants to write something. And I'll appeal to everybody out there. Please come up with some fantastic ideas and write some articles, because we're always looking for content. Because we try and get as many different people as possible. And I know we rely on some people, such as your good self, to do interviews for us or reviews. If we, there's certain people we can go to ask, but it's just great to be able to involve lots and lots of different people and their different stories. It was great at Leicester. I sort of accosted this guy. He'd got two lads with him who were quite young, and they were standing taking some photographs in the foyer at Leicester. And they'd managed to get one of the big balloons. And they were taking it home as a souvenir. And I sort of went over to them and I said, "Oh, hi, is this your first Marillion gig?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, really excited." I can't remember how old the younger lad was. And I said, "Oh, do you fancy writing a review of Leicester? So we've got a different perspective of younger children on it." Yeah. And they were like, "Oh, yeah, that's great." So, I think some people just wonder who this strange woman is, just accosting them at gigs and saying, "Come on, write an article for us." But it's just nice to try and pull people in who've never been part of so much part of the community before. And those the charity raffles have been fantastic, really, for being able to chat to people and hear their stories. And Sheila and Lucy played a massive part in developing that with all the craft things that they added, particularly at Port Zealand. So that's just another aspect of what we do.
Yeah, and Have you seen any of the tribute bands to Marillion?
I think I have, but I can't remember.
You can't remember
or where. It was totally. I'm sure I went to see one at the Robin 2 in Bilston many years ago, but I haven't seen any of the ones recently, and that's just mainly because of my life being really hectic. So. We often, if we go to Leicester, we tend to still stay at home and travel to Leicester every day. So I'm often sort of just turning up in the evening. And although we managed to get to the first couple of Port Zealand conventions, I was off work. I was sort of taking a career break at the time because my children were tiny, and we brought the children with us as little toddlers. Yeah. But there's no way of getting time off from teaching, unfortunately. So since I've been back at work full time, there's been no way to get to any of those conventions anywhere else, which is such a shame. And that's kind of prevents me from doing some of those daytime activities and seeing some of the tribute bands, which I would love to see.
Yeah.
But it's just my life is too hectic, I'm afraid.
Well, you've got 8 chances next year. And
I know.
the conventions run right up to, is it June
July?
time?
June,
July, the last one.
Yeah, I think one of them might coincide with half term in May.
Right.
So I keep thinking
that never happens.
maybe that's actually going to be one that I can get to, So it would just be absolutely brilliant. My husband's thinking of retiring, taking early retirement. And he said, hey, when I retire, I can go around all the Marillion conventions. I said, I'm not ready to retire yet. You can't just go swanning off on your own.
But, no, that's not fair, is it? No.
But if they're still going into my retirement, I shall certainly be there.
I'm sure that's a long way off.
Not
really what you want to hear, is it?
One of the things that we were talking on in the episode that we've just recorded on Marillion.com was back when the Web UK used to do their own events.
Yeah.
Even going back, because that was 1999, where there was the one of the earlier convention type things with a quiz and events on at the Zodiac.
Yes.
And I think the year before there was something similar with Radiation, where would have a listening party and stuff. And even going back to earlier days where there was the Brave the movie back in '94. In Milton Keynes. There's been other Web UK events before that, but there doesn't seem to have been anything for a long, long time.
No, and I think probably most of that predated the Marillion weekends.
Yes, it did.
So I think there wasn't anything like that at the time. If you wanted to get together with people socially, Web UK event was a nice idea. And then I think as soon as the weekend started, they didn't really feel the need so much. We did try and get a couple of other ones off the ground, and it never really happened. Can't even remember why. I know we talked about lots and lots of ideas about how we could do another event, but it just never seemed to work out. And then the band started taking over a little bit. I can't remember what year those barbecues were. Do you remember they did a couple of barbecues? Yeah. And things like that weren't really Web UK events, but were similar sorts of things, but had been organised by the band as part of things. Was it to do with what one of the pre-orders maybe? Or there were sort of other events happening.
Well, there was the Marbles warm up in Aylesbury. So the Web UK Day was the first part of that, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was for the Road Club, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we often used to talk about that. Could we have a date at the beginning of the tour, which was Web UK only? But I think in that sort of transition period when they were more starting out on their own without record company, I think they were a bit hesitant to restrict sales in any way because they didn't know how things were going to go. So it was like, probably if you want to buy a ticket, it's no point really reserving a night for Web UK members, because probably all those people would be able to get a ticket anyway. So it's not really worth the effort of organising it. So we sort of just tended to just seemed to fade away, really.
Yeah.
All those ideas. And also I think perhaps people's lives, the sort of times of their lives when people were younger and had a bit more time on their hands, they were perhaps a bit more up for that. And then people sort of got a bit more tied down with life and it just sort of went a bit out of the window. But it's probably a bit of a shame that we perhaps don't do something like that these days. Perhaps you ought to revive it.
It would be nice if you could. And I'd also like to throw this idea into the ring. I still wear my Web UK T-shirt. I'd just like you to bring another Web UK T-shirt out if you could, please.
Oh gosh, we had a bit of a battle over that because we sort of proposed it, and it was sort of very much, are you sure it's going to sell? And we were like, yeah, we're sure people would be up for a Web UK T-shirt. Lots of people had said that they were interested. And I think they ended up with quite a lot left.
Oh, okay.
sort of like it's not particularly cost effective.
Yeah.
I think money's, like all these things, it's really the Web UK. I don't want to say it's not as important to the band as it is, because that's not really fair to say that, because they do consider us important. But I think at one point it was more of a core that they could rely on, whereas now they've got the internet, and they've got, I think as soon as things like the eWebs and the, all the Marillion mailing lists and that side of things went out, that really became another community. Whereas before, the only people who were receiving information by some sort of direct mailing were Web UK members. Yeah. So I think it's just that in a way it grew into a bigger thing that was more than us, which is like what I said, I felt surprised that we survived that. Because really, sometimes it's like, what do you need us for? They could sell Christmas CDs if they wanted to as a bonus to anybody who was on the mailing list. So I think it's lovely that they still do preserve that as a special thing for Web UK members. That's just a really, that's a special thing. But we kept thinking people are going to not want publications anymore. You can look at photos of plenty, can't you, online? The moment there's a gig, you can find people's photos.
A lot of the, well, I speak for myself, I might be on my own with this, but a lot of fans are collectors. So they want physical product, they want, physical magazines. Look at how many books have come out about the band in recent years.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think people do. I mean, people do. I look after the email, Web UK email, and I do get some quite worried messages from people that they might have missed an issue. Oh, I didn't subscribe. What if I miss an issue because I've got the complete set? And it still means a lot to them to have the complete set. And, that's really nice. And I think, like I said, we've managed to maintain quite a steady number of people. I don't think we are ever going to disappear now until the band does, because that hardcore of people still want the magazines. They still want to collect. They still want everything that comes out. And I hope that we can still have a bit of a unique take on things, or, like I said, a quality product in terms of as a souvenir. And, and really, when you think about concert programs which have photographs in, you can easily go to a gig and pay £10, can't you, for like one program?
And more, the Gabriel one was quite expensive. It's really nice, but quite expensive.
Yeah, and really, there's not a lot of substance to them. They quite often have just got a load of photographs, but not really a lot of information. And when you think, actually, what we're producing is something much nicer than that, because it's not only has it got the lovely photographs and artwork, but we do have a lot of information in there.
Yeah, there's content,
things that are of interest to people. So I do see a bright future for us as long as the band keeps going. We'll be there trying to document them in a different way if possible.
I still think the magazine's fantastic, and as we said, for the price you charge, it's ridiculously good. It really is.
That's because we don't charge anything for stuffing the magazine.
No, there is that.
I think if we had to pay somebody, it's all very. But you know what? It's a privilege, really. The band have always treated us, and Lucy and the whole staff have always treated us really well, and we've had some really special moments of being members of the team. So, I can remember being invited down to listen to the Marbles album before it came out, in the days when the Portakabin was still there, and all sitting huddled round in the Portakabin. And that's a real privilege to be able to do something like that. So, I'm more than happy to give up time in return to, stuff magazines in envelopes, because, they've always been more than generous in experiences that we've had, even though we don't really see much of the band, occasionally that we might bump into one of them, or they sort of, if we get to interview them, that's lovely. But it's not about that. It's sort of feeling that you've contributed to something that's so important to people.
And you're part of it, aren't you? You're a part of it, absolutely. If I had to ask you, from all the things that you've talked about there, if you had one particular favourite Marillion album or gig, could you narrow that down to that?
I think I've still got a really soft spot for Season's End, possibly because that was a monumentous part of my life, of suddenly discovering Marillion properly and meeting my husband, and it's a great album anyway. You know, there's not a bad song on it. I loved An Hour Before It's Dark, and so, you know, I think I've had some highs and lows over the years. I never really loved Radiation. I was a bit, when that came out, I thought, oh my goodness, where are they going? And then I loved Marillion.com when that came out, because it was sort of, you know, a contrast. And again, that was about the time I got involved with the Web UK. But I don't know, in fact, I'll just squeeze in as well that my daughter played on An Hour Before It's Dark as well, because she plays the harp. And so we went down to the Racket Club with her to record the harp for Crow and Nightingale. And that was amazing, really, because although it's quite a small part of the song, it was just special to feel that she'd had that chance to, you know, to do that. And she's been, you know, she came to her first Marillion convention I was pregnant with her when it was Pontins, I think. And then we took her to the next sort of couple of, came to Minehead as a baby and things like that. And then all of a sudden, you know, aged 19, she was playing a harp on the album. So I think that's also going to have quite a special place in my heart.
Understandably, that's fantastic.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And what are your favourite songs, John, innit?
Well, my favourite song on the album, absolutely, is You Know That. That's brilliant. Thank you very much for talking to us, Anne. It's been great to sort of hear some of your stories, and obviously Marillion are a huge part of your life still, and responsible for a lot of things happening in your life.
Well, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything, if there's anybody listening that isn't a member of the Web, could you, in a couple of sentences, sum up why they should become a member of the Web?
Well, I think, as you've said, it's amazing value for money. Where else would you get 2 quality publications and a CD for £10? I do not know. And also, I think if you love Marillion, you would want to, you know, to me, like we're talking about going into shops and buying magazines years ago, when I was scouring the pages in the hope that there'd be an article about Marillion, and you might be lucky and Classic Rock magazine or Kerrang might have a little piece about them, and you'd buy it. Can't remember how many pounds you'd be paying back then. You'd buy it for a double page article, when, you know, every page of the Web UK magazine is packed with things that you want to read about the band. And, you know, I do think that we managed to sometimes come up with things that didn't know before. That you think, after all the things I've read over all the years, you just think, you know, I must know everything there is to know. Must have all been covered. But I still think we are finding new things. I think anybody who's really interested in the band would probably want to. And you can even do one of Fraser's really crazy competitions.
Yeah, definitely. Which we'll ask Fraser about when we talk to Fraser. But yes, yeah, that's a fantastic advert. It's great value, and I've got a very large collection of web magazines and the T-shirt. And please keep it going as long as you can. Absolutely,
We'll try.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thanks, Anne. It's been great.
It's been great to chat with you. Thanks for asking me to contribute to the magazine, as you have done over the last 18 months or so. I've loved chatting to Pete, for example, and Ian, and you know, I'd love to do some more. If you need any more articles, please shout.
Yes, he's quite cheap and reasonable.
Yeah, that's true.
Very cheap, yes. But not reasonable, yes. But no, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Okay, thanks very much.
All there is to say is it's goodbye from Anne.
Bye.
And it's goodbye from Craig.
Goodbye.
And it's good night from me. Take care.
And stay alive. Hey. Thanks for listening to Planet Marzipan Podcast. Please like and subscribe from whichever platform you get your podcasts from. You can contact us at planetmarzipanpodcast@gmail.com and check out Marillion.com, fishmusic.scot or fishmusic.eu for all the good stuff.